We'll go ahead and call our Thursday, April 4, 2024 Roanoke County School Board work session to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Item 2.01, Roanoke County Public Schools Perkins Plan. Mr. Jason, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Nicely. The Strengthening Career and Technical Education for the 21st Century Act, otherwise known as the Perkins 5 Plan, is similar to past years' plans, and Roanoke County Public Schools' proposed 24-25 local Perkins Plan has been made available on board docs for your perusal. Perkins funds augment local effort to supply high-level CTE programs in our school division. A major use of the federal monies is for equipment such as computers for technology education classes and or heavy equipment for the trade and industry classes. Those are just a couple examples. The Roanoke County Public Schools Perkins Plan is locally developed using constraints outlined by federal legislation and is first reviewed and approved by the General Advisory Committee, of which several of you are members, and of which Mr. Gordy Ziegler of Intervision is chairman. The Perkins Plan was approved by the CTE General Advisory Committee just this past Tuesday at our meeting at Burton Center. The next step in the process is to request approval from the school board. Since the local plan and budget is a lengthy Excel document, a school board summary has been provided on board docs as well, and it provides easy reference to the Excel file. I appreciate your consideration of the information, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions. And this is just for information with the hopes and plans to have this on, consent next meeting.
Sounds good.
Question?
Just for context, Mr. Sir, can you remind us what the total amount of the Perkins federal dollars are?
Sure. For this year, and we base our next year's plan until we get the state allocation for next year, which we haven't received. The current number is $179,000 and change.
Just for perspective.
Yes.
Which is really cool every
good.
year. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sir.
Yep.
2.02, Capital Campaign. Mr. Jason, sir. Mr. Carl York.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We bring to you an interesting topic this morning, or this afternoon, in regards to the work that Mr. York's helping us with, and really trying to generate excitement around the build of the new center. And as you know, we've been working hard, Mr. York especially, in making new contacts in the business community, business and industry, on the fundraising front. And we want to just run through a concept that we've run across in our dialogue with others around the state, and actually we've talked to folks outside the state on a concept that has helped some other entities. And just want to run through a few items here, and I don't know, do I have a clicker?
I can, if you want.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I should ask for that ahead of time, but this whole process that we're going through has been really positive in building relationships, and I know Carl will reiterate this, but you know, the process that we're going through, thank you, Chuck, is not just for the immediate. We're looking at this as a long-term process and a long-term relationship building process. We want to partner with business and industry, not for just the immediate of when this center is built, but to have their collaboration and ongoing support beyond the opening of the center. We just want to touch on a few things, a little bit of a progress report, the capital campaign itself and what we're calling it, and trying to maximize that opportunity, and then finding fundraising expertise. So the progress to this point, of course, what will help, and I know we're in the process of this, is the name of the new center. That will help in the marketing and just pushing that forward. We're working with the builders, Branch and RRMM, Balzer and Associates, on the new footprint for the new center. We're soon getting into, up to this point, we really haven't dabbled too heavily on the equipment front, but understanding that equipment's going to be a very important and somewhat expensive piece to the new center that we will be delving into that very soon with the builders and trying to determine what the need specifically is going to be. Of course, we want to open this center with top-notch equipment for our students to work on, and then as we present adult education opportunities, we want this to open with top-notch equipment and then be able to maintain that. We're in the process, of course, with identifying our current partners and future partners, people that and companies that we can partner with, and preparing a way for fundraising. The strategy that we're using, and we've reviewed this before, I think the last time we met with you, we ran through this, but just doing our research, identifying those business and industry partners that would be good targets to go and build those relationships with. Of course, we already have some of those built. Carl's really helping develop that out and build that portfolio, meeting in person, building those relationships, and like I said, not just short term, but for the long term, and creating a mutually beneficial ongoing partnership. So Carl's going to take it away here with some of the more recent things that have come to light.
So it's really interesting, in researching, the first part of this is researching. We've talked to a number of other school systems throughout the country and in the state, and they have one thing in common to which they credit a lot of their success to. So we wanted to make sure that we attacked this challenge to try to raise as much money as we could, but we also wanted to go beyond what our thoughts were. We wanted to get expert advice from others that have walked this path. So a little bit of a tease here. I'll talk about that in a moment, but there's one thing that they all had in common. So talking to Tanel Pretty at the principal of Academies Aloud, and she recommended partnering with Hartsook, which is a fundraising expert. They just changed their name to Kinetic, so it's now Kinetic. But that was something that she thought was vital to them raising the money that they raised. They tripled, with that partnership, they tripled their goal. They tripled what they thought they could raise. They brought in 3 times as much. And then they utilized their Loudoun County, Loudoun Education Foundation to run the money through. So again, I'm trying to figure out how these folks did what they did, why they were successful, and what works, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
And if I can interject, in the case of Loudoun, they started off thinking they were pretty ambitious, thinking about a $5 million fundraising capital campaign. They hired Kinetic to come in, or Hartsook at that time, hired them to come in. They did their canvassing, they did their work, came back to the school system and the Education Foundation and said, y'all are shooting way too low. The capacity in this area is 3 times that. And they ended up achieving that.
Yeah, they actually ended up with 15.5 million, which they didn't think was there. So, this company came in and looked at the capacity of companies, looked at what was out there and said, you're aiming way too low. So that was interesting to me. Then I spoke to Brian Knoller with Northland Career Center. They had also hired Kinetic and said they were very good. They formed a 501c3, which helped them raise additional foundation dollars. And then they used Kinetic's grant writers. They also said they were a big help. Again, they had a big budget to get, a big number to get, and they were really appreciative of having hired this company to come in and sort of set the tone for setting up the process. The process is a big thing with all these guys is understanding what groundwork they need to lay in order so that companies would respond the way they wanted them to. So that was Northland Career Center. And then I also talked to Mary Truner, who's the executive director, also highly recommended Kinetic. Their mission was to raise money for updates and improvements. So they were in a little bit of a different place. They stated that Kinetic also had great contacts for foundations, entities for awarding grants, scholarship opportunities, and more. They ended up signing a number of multi-year proposals. So again, the thing that kept coming up was that all of these folks ended up hiring a professional fundraising partner to start them off on the path. So that was interesting to us. We haven't gone that way up to now. But again, some of the challenges that we've already talked about that we have are understanding the capacity of these companies. The fear is if you go in too low, they'll say that's not a big enough deal for us to be involved in. If you go in too high, then they can say that's too much, we're not going to be involved in. So one of the things that a partner like this does is they come in, they do the data, they do the research, they understand what their history is, what they've given to in the past, what they like to give to. So they give you a lot of background, and then they set up a structure where when you go in and you're actually talking to the person that can pull the trigger, that can actually make the call, you're speaking the language that they're used to, and you're talking in terms that they're used to utilizing. So anyways, that's what they all had in common. And, and again, these groups also, they have a much broader view. Initially, when we started, we were looking at the companies here in the Roanoke Valley. There's a lot more out there that could be a part of this than just what's within earshot. There's a lot of different folks. There's a lot of foundations, a lot of different groups that might have a heart or might have a desire to help us with this CTE project.
So as we consider this and throw this out there, why would we consider doing this with a partner? I feel like from what we've gathered and what we've heard, talking with the Kinetic folks, reaching out to them being rather candid with us about their process and what they bring to the table. They bring a time to, they've used this before. This is not a startup company just winging it. They've been through this. They've helped others really bolster and be secure in what they're going after. They bring that smart counsel and superior strategies that can really benefit a capital campaign like what we're going after. They also bring the research and data when they're able to dig into and find the background, like Carl was just saying about, which companies are interested in giving to educational initiatives and which ones maybe we're wasting a little bit of time on and we should maybe steer away from. So I feel like those types of things are invaluable, and that capacity thing is something that we've wondered about. If we don't hit that right, I feel like we walk away thinking, what's still out there? What haven't we tapped into? They help with donor identification and cultivation, specifically in areas where, we've been focusing on business and industry, maybe foundations, other entities around the country that have shown a proclivity to give towards these types of initiatives. And as we look at an endowment, long-term type of thing, we feel like we could set something up for the students of the future. For the immediate and the future, if we were able to tap in and really make this thing grow to what we hope. And then we feel like this would be a good return on the investment. While it might sound like a nice little chunk of money up front, based on what we've talked with others about, it sounds like that is a small drop compared to what is reaped. So that's kind of what we wanted to discuss with you today.
So the one thing that's important to understand is they come in and sort of set the groundwork, but we don't want them to own the relationships. We'll be alongside with them the whole time. They'll set the tone. They'll look at who we should be talking to that we've already identified and who we should be talking to that maybe we haven't thought of, and then they'll set us on that course, and then they'll move out of the way. We'll still be negotiating the deal. We'll still be making the verbal offer, the written offer. We'll be closing the deal. When it's all said and done, and once this building opens, our hope is that we have relationships with these companies moving forward, that we can move our registered apprenticeship or apprentices into jobs with them, that we continue this conversation on so that the next time a need comes up, they understand what we're about, what we need, what we're looking for, and we'll keep those relationships going. So it's really sort of a investment in a long-term approach.
Some clarification, just to help me with this.
Sure.
We're talking about having expertise to identify overall donor capacity for our region and beyond.
Correct.
But also in a very practical sense. I know part of what we talked about from the get-go in terms of a capital campaign is some sort of naming recognitions within the new center. You might have, let's say within the health sciences area, but just by way of example, a wall with, okay, these are companies that have donated, and maybe at certain levels, we need some expertise to determine what are those levels, so we don't, so we get this right from the beginning.
Right.
Right? So
Yeah,
that's
and
part
we-
of the idea here. I think.
Right, and we started off thinking we had something pegged there, and we backed off of that, because we've realized that it's a real challenge to find that happy medium and not undercut or overcut the industry here in the valley. So that it would be a key part of being able to, of discovery, I guess.
So to this point, when I've met with a lot of these companies, they know that we're gonna come back to them at some point. They kind of lean in for, what's the ask, what do you want? And we haven't gone there yet, because we're trying to make sure that what we're asking for is what we need, so that we cover what we need, but also so that we're asking for the right thing, and we're understanding how they give.
So we'd be glad to take any questions you have about this. It's a new concept, and we're excited about the possibilities. We feel like we can do this thing right, and we get one shot at it.
When would the campaign start?
I think in talking with the companies, and correct me if you have a different feel, but it would take them a little bit of time to get the lay of the land and do their data and background research, be able to get that information to us, and then us be able to proceed. But
It'll take 4 or 5 months.
So it's not concurrent with the school year, I guess, is what I'm,
no.
okay. You're not that far along. You've got to put in the work, okay.
Well, I'll ask the elephant in the room question. Is there a fee involved, and what is the fee, and what's the costing, and is there a price structure you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so obviously, their business model, they would like to stay and do the whole thing. When I started talking to them, I'm like, we're not interested in that. What we really want is your process. We want you to come in, identify the areas, identify who we should be talking to, and help us determine cost and level. So their fee from the beginning, so for the first stage is $48,000. Now that, and then also there's a travel but.
So they have a tiered system, you can buy in at this level, this level,
That's
this
right.
level. And so just out of curiosity, those companies that you talk to, what levels did they buy in at? And do you have an opportunity to go and talk to those companies like at the base level, the middle level, and the highest level to see, hey, if you had to do this again, would you go on at A, B, or C level? I don't know if you've gotten that far.
Well, we haven't,
Go
go ahead. No. We haven't gone down that road, because I thought, we probably just want to do the first level.
Okay.
And I feel comfortable with that. But some of them have gone, hey, they just turn it over to them, but they still want the relationships. They all want the relationships in the end. So that's really important. But
Well, the key point there being wanting to stay with that first part is them coming alongside us coming alongside them, working collaboratively to get that process started. From what we've heard from Kinetic specifically is they can get us, it's almost like a kickstart, get us started, but then once we have that process, and they're not shy about sharing what they do. It's in our first conversation with them, they were sharing more information than I ever anticipated, telling us what kind of questions they ask and that type of thing. So once we get that under our belt and get, I think the most important piece they can bring is that donor capacity piece. We can take it and run. So.
with the academies allowed, and I know one of the stories that Tanel shared was the first ask they went out that they were going to make, they recommended they double it. And they ended up getting half that, but they felt like they paid for it in the first shot. So I'm not saying, I don't know how we'll go, but it'll pay for itself pretty quick if it goes the way all these others have gone.
And how many months of service is that 48K? Is that,
Well, it depends on how you set it up, but generally it takes 4 or so months to get started, and that's when you start to see funds come in, from what I'm told. But it'll be probably a half a year or so until we get set up, and then they'll be gone.
So to Ms. Fashani's question, if I'm understanding, are we paying for a deliverable or a period of time?
More of a
Or
deliverable.
is it okay to make that
I
distinction?
think it's more of a deliverable.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, they're gonna come in. and
Yeah,
help
that's what
us
I'm
with
asking, yeah.
That process, I don't know that it's open-ended per se, but they come in, help us with what we agree to, and then they depart, like Carl said. I mean, they come alongside us, get us started, and then we can build off of that.
Typically, they help you identify. Now, every area is different. Loudon's different than down here. There's a
Well,
lot
heck
more
yeah.
opportunity up there.
Lot of
But-
money.
But they talked about, you know, they like to identify 120 targets. Within that, there's 80 targets that they recommend that we really focus on. Half of that, 40, is the ones that they think are low-hanging fruit, but also good returns that they actually go out with us. So there's a tiered process to how they do it. You know, they have a lot online too. I mean, their reputation, they want to make sure that this is a successful venture for them. I think they see this as an opportunity to maybe do more of this around the country. But they have a large number of partners that they've worked with, a lot of nonprofits.
I got one more question. So, first time I heard of this company, do they have a competitor in the market that you've been able to identify?
There's several around, and I've got I don't have the list with me. I have like 10 others, and a lot of them are regional. So if we were in Atlanta, there's one in Atlanta that a lot of people use. If we were in New York City, but this is the one. Talking to people all over the country, we keep coming back to Kinetic. We keep coming back to this group.
They're out of North
they're out-
Carolina, I
no,
think, or
they're-
South Carolina.
No, our partner would be out of North Carolina. They're out of Kansas City.
That's
They're out of the
right.
center
Headquarters.
of the, yeah.
Thank you.
Is it at all performance-based? I mean, if they aren't able to deliver, not performance-based at all?
No, we roll the dice with them, we commit to them, and we pay them, and they do their thing, and it's up to us to make sure that we're getting everything out of them that we can get, and that it's successful.
I think we asked that question, though. We broached it with them as to whether they could tie their price to success, and that wasn't part of the.
Yeah, the ones I've ever been a part of, they get you rolling, they give you the model to, you know, push out the envelopes or whatever, you know, in today's world, it's a little different, but, you know, you push out the envelopes, you get the returns, and then they give you a follow-up and a follow-up and a follow-up.
Yes.
And so it is a step out on the ledge type thing. But, you know.
From everything we've heard, we feel good about proposing this.
Oh,
I feel like
they've
it
got the
could be a
problem.
really
They're
good
not
return.
successful by not
Right.
getting the money. No, I agree, but it's not a, you know, well, we'll take back some of the fees if you don't get this or that. This is the fee.
And Ms. Peterson, where might we propose we find $48,000?
I think the recommendation today, Mr. London, would be to, you know, this is like obviously new territory for us to even to go down this path. We think we'd be remiss not to present it to you because it seems like something, you know, that would really benefit now and in the future. I think today the ask would be, you know, is this something that you'd be interested in us pursue, and we'll put together, you know, a proposal to how to, you know, fund it, you know, more information in terms of what that agreement would look like, and kind of go from there. If today the board were to say, this is a crazy idea, don't do anything more on that, then we would, you know, take that direction accordingly. But I think today the ask would be, you know, would you like for us to pursue that and come back with some more information about those details? Is that fair?
Yes.
So does this have to go to RFP?
It doesn't, it's under that threshold.
It is under the threshold, okay. Well, I would support continuing the process. I think it's a great idea. It sounds like some people had some serious success with it. It's worth looking into further.
You know, we're not committing to anything
Yeah.
at this point. We're committing to learning the process and maybe getting a quote.
Good.
Right, sounds good.
We'll
Thank
come
you.
back with more information. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2.03, 2024-2025 Special Education Annual Plan, Dr. Beth Harmon.
afternoon.
Welcome.
In your documents is the annual presentation of the Special Education Part B flow-through grant application. The purpose of this document is to provide assurances that our division certifies that throughout the grant award period of 2024, 2025, that we will meet the federal IDEA and Virginia regulations governing special education programs for children with disabilities. We are further certifying that the division has current local policies and procedures for the provision of special education and related services, which ensure compliance of IDEA, federal implementing regulations, and the Virginia Board of Education's regulations. Additionally, you've been provided documentation regarding our fiscal responsibilities of maintenance of effort, proportionate set aside for parentally placed students in private schools, and our projected spending for IDEA Part B, Section 611 and 619 grant funds. You have the comprehensive document. It's pretty complex, and we're asking for your consent to move forward with our grant application at the next meeting.
Any questions? Thank you.
Easy peasy.
Item 2.04, proposed attendance boundary rezoning with Glen Cove and Masons Cove Elementary Schools. Dr. Rhonda Stegall.
Transmitting?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so,
what we're going to talk about this afternoon is about potential of rezoning some boundaries. And so what we're going to look at is we have Masons Cove Elementary School that has lower numbers, and we have Glen Cove Elementary School that has a little bit higher numbers. And we're going to talk about the potential of taking some of the students and changing their attendance zones. So the areas that we're talking about, if you look right there in the bottom corner, there's the brown building. This is our building we're sitting in. So what we're talking about is everything that's highlighted there. So Ponderosa is the road right beside the school building office. And then it goes down to the retreat retreat apartments. That's what's circled there. So it's basically the students who are attend the addresses that are in those locations. The second area is going to be Lock Haven to Bell Haven, which is across the interstate, and it runs parallel with the interstate heading north. And you can see it goes up to where Bell Haven is. So it would include that street. One thing to note about Lock Haven is the last time we rebalanced this area, we included Lock Haven, and those majority of those people on those streets had decided to remain at Northside. So we've already been through this process with that street, but we're still going to include that in this conversation. Just so you know about the feeder schools, Glen Cove Elementary, they feed into Northside Middle School and Northside High School, and Masons Cove feeds into Glenver Middle and Glenver High. So what we're saying is the kids on the street, if we were to approve this change in the boundaries, then their attendance zone would change over. So instead of attending Glen Cove Elementary, they would attend Masons Cove, and that's going to change their middle and high school, just so we're all clear about that. Take a look at the enrollment numbers. Glen Cove there on the left and Masons Cove on the right. Glen Cove has double the number of students as Masons Cove. And if you look at the capacity, they're at 86% capacity, and Masons Cove is at 73% capacity. Also keeping in mind that Glen Cove is about to enter into construction, so that adds another component.
Can you go back? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
About that, related, and this is going to be off topic just a touch. But, so, I'm sorry, it's the first question's not, but, so are we declining enrollment at Masons Cove? Is that why we're talking about this? Or
No,
how's
they just have a lower number. They have room for growth,
Oh, sure.
and the Glen Cove is getting a little higher. It's not that they don't have the capacity, it's the resources, right? So Masons Cove has less students, pupils per student, per teacher, and so they have room. It would just take the
Sure.
pressure off
It's
the
a newer
building.
Yeah, okay.
It's certainly not an enrollment area that's growing either. I mean, so, you know, with a school that low in numbers, you know, where we can do some things that make sense to shift.
Sure, no, I'm okay. going to the Glen Cove being at 86%, if that is the same footprint as Cundiff, are we at 100% or 110%, even though when you go back to the studies we had done, they said 75 or 80% or whatever it was? Does that make sense? I mean,
I'm not sure what those were off top of my
I
head.
don't either. I've got them though in a document. I can
but it's
share that with
basically
you.
the same school still, right? So I'm just curious. Okay. But we're just shifting, so there's no really, that was an
But
off
to your
topic.
point, Mr. Greenway, as Dr. Seagal said, we're getting ready, of course, to do the renovation at Glen Cove as well as Cundiff. And, the one at Cundiff does have more additions.
bit more
Included in
I
Glen
just
Cove.
find
The other
that,
piece about Glen Cove is, there is currently on the plans to add another apartment complex down at the corner of Cove and Peters Creek, which would also be in
put more pressure.
our district.
Yeah.
So just trying to be more proactive in moving forward here. And the timing would be good just in terms of that construction getting ready to start.
Sure.
A couple of the physical attributes of Mason's Cove, obviously if you've been there, it's a beautiful school. 52,000 square feet, it's on 10 acres of beautiful land with nice views. It's actually a green school, it's a gold LEED certified school. And it also has 2 playgrounds for the different age groups. Class size, average, they have about 1,000 square feet, a little over 1,000 square feet. They have dedicated art room and music room, and they have their own full track basketball court, baseball field, and outdoor pavilion. Highlights from Mason's Cove, they're fully accredited. They have an average of 13 years experience with their staff. They have a very dedicated staff, very low turnover, a very active PTA. There's all kinds of community involvement opportunities. There's a student council that's very active, and there is an after-school program, ASK, that's provided by Parks and Recreation. If you take a look at the middle and high school enrollments, just so you can take a picture of that, looking at the Northside schools on the left and the Glenver schools on the right. Northside Middle, the current capacity is at 993, and they have 615. If you look at Northside High School, the current capacity is 1217, and they're at 903. So it's not an issue of concern about meeting capacity. And you look at Glenver, their capacity is 619, and they are at 425. And then at the high school, 755 is their capacity, and they're at 613. So the next slide, you're going to see the amount of numbers of the students. It's a very low number that we're moving, but then again, it helps take the pressure off of the schools. But it's not necessarily a capacity issue. So here are the particulars to this move. The rising kindergarten students through 5th grade who are attending Glen Cove, those in this designated area that we have determined for the next school year, they would attend the Glenver Middle Schools and Glenver High Schools. Rising 6th graders would go to the Glenver Middle School next year. And then the rising 7th through 12th graders who are already attending Northside Middle and Northside High would have the option to continue to attend those schools, and we would provide transportation for the next 6 years. There's also a VHSL component there that we want parents to understand that as a 9th grader, you establish your VHSL eligibility. So we encourage those students to stay at the school they're at, or we would have to give special permission for them to transfer. And it's just another step that we have to involve if they're an athlete. And then for families who already have children, so this is a sibling exception. So for kindergartners through 5th graders, if they have a sibling who's already at Northside Middle or Northside High School, they can receive the sibling exception where they can continue through on to Northside Middle and Northside High School. There's another option for people if you don't have a sibling in that situation and you still want to attend the Northside Middle and Northside High School, even though you're going to be zoned to go to the Glenver schools, you can ask for an in-county transfer. So what an in-county transfer is, it's at no cost, and anyone who lives in Roanoke County can ask for a transfer to any other school within the county. So if we move forward with this and they are zoned to go to Glenver schools and decide they want to attend to Northside schools, then they could fill out those applications. And they're based on student attendance, student discipline, and students' academics. And so the principals make those decisions, and if approved, then they could attend the Northside schools. Transportation will not be provided beyond the 6 years. So the parents would then be responsible for transportation after the 6 years. Whenever we approve someone for in-county transfer, we don't guarantee transportation, but if there is a bus and there is room on that bus, for example, the students in this situation, we will be running a bus through their neighborhood. So as long as there's room on that bus and they've been approved, they could ride the school bus. Okay. The numbers that we're looking at, so the Lock Haven Drive, the one across the interstate, these are the students, number of students who live there. However, all of them have already made the decision to stay in the north side area. We've already had those conversations with them. When you look at Ponderosa, the street from Ponderosa to the retreat, those are the number of students that are currently at those addresses, and then the number of students at the retreat. So the total number, we're talking about 20 students that could potentially move into Masons Cove Elementary, and potentially 8 and 9 at the middle school and high school. So we're at very low numbers. The great thing about this plan is we have lots of options for every family. They can make their decisions of what's best, in the best interest of their children and their family. Next steps. So what we would do is send a letter out. We already have the addresses ready to go, so we could send a letter out to these families letting them know that they live on the streets that are being considered for this balancing. And we would invite them to an informational meeting that's going to be held at Masons Cove on Tuesday, April 23rd at 6 o'clock. And what we would do there is have a presentation, answer any of their questions, walk them through and give them a tour of the school. Then for those who have middle school and high school students who are interested in touring Glenver Middle and Glenver High, we would set up those tours for them as well. And then if this is approved, it would go into effect at the beginning of the 24-25 school year, which is next school year. And we would work with the families with their individual decisions and help them with all the necessary paperwork and transportation and everything that would be involved in those changes. So any questions about any of that?
Do you anticipate any additional transportation costs?
We're still currently, this is the last year, when we made the first move, we're still running buses, double buses. This year was the last year for that, so we would continue that for 6 more years. So yes, there is additional, but that's what we've done the last 6 years. So we've been paying
The previous
for it.
rezoning, if you recall, was over the Hanging Rock area, so. It was smooth the last time, and you can see the impact is small immediately, but it just makes sense to go ahead and do it for, long-term thinking. You get to start somewhere.
Thank you, Dr. Skull.
All right, thank you.
2.05, Policy 6.16, Final Assessments and Exemptions for Full-Year Credit-Bearing Courses. Mr. Mike Riley.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chuck, if you could go ahead and open up the edited document there for me. As you guys know, this time last year, we made some changes to the exam policy. In years past, of course, coming out of COVID, we hadn't tracked attendance for a while, and attendance is something that we all know is very important, so we wanted to make sure we brought that back. We wanted to kind of standardize the amount of credit that was being applied to the final examination. This year, it's at least, it's a test grade in that final fourth 9 weeks. And then we also removed the ability of juniors, freshmen and sophomores from being exempt. In the past, anybody could be exempt. There were very few students taking final assessments. I think the board and us, as we talked about that, decided that we wanted students to be taking final assessments, that at the end of the courses, they would have something that would kind of culminate that class and give that student and that teacher the ability to know that they've mastered that content. So we built that out. And last year, the one thing we did do was we decided to carve out an exception for students that needed to take an SOL test. One, we didn't want them to have to prepare for both, but two, it didn't necessarily make sense for the students to have to take 2 culminating assessments at the end. That's what an SOL test is. Well, as we've entered this school year, and Chuck, if you can go to the second page there is where we've made the suggested edits. is we've had several stakeholders reach out to me. I think they've reached out to some board members saying that there are other culminating assessments that students have to take at the end of the year. And it does start to almost become double jeopardy having to take certain assessments and a final examination. So what we're proposing is to make an edit that would take effect this year, and we've already reached out to teachers. I know the students aren't going to have an issue with it. We've talked to a lot of them. In fact, I actually received some petitions at the beginning of the year from some students that wanted their end of the year examination to count for this. But the change we're making is to still keep the mandatory end of course SOL test as a route for a student to be exempt. But then in many of our courses, there's national and state certification testing that students have to take at the end of the course that truly serves as a culminating event for them. Doesn't make sense for them to have to take a separate final exam. Same thing with our students who are taking AP examinations. At the end of those courses, they're taking very rigorous exams. Often these students who are taking AP exams have multiple exams that they have to take at the end of the year. And the thinking is we want our students to be taking some type of final assessment, but if they're taking either an SOL test, the end of course credentialing or certification test, or they're taking the advanced placement test, there wouldn't be a need for them to also take a final examination. So the proposal is to make the changes as you see here and as posted on board docs to just have those three different areas allow students to not have to take a final examination in that course.
So just for clarification, this is if they take the exam, not just being in the AP course?
Correct. The whole thought is we want students to be taking some type of culminating exam at the end. The one group that can be exempt for that, and we put this in the initial policy, are seniors. Like seniors, if they have the grades that they need and have maintained attendance, have the ability to be exempt regardless. What we're saying is for the other classes, and seniors included, they could be exempt from a final examination if they're taking another culminating exam at the end of that course. But they would have to take the exam. For instance, if you're in an AP course, you would need to take the AP exam to be exempt. If you chose not to take the AP exam, then you'd take a final.
So it's not that you can qualify to take the exam, you actually
Correct.
have to sit for the exam.
Correct.
And because the AP exams are typically scheduled in early May, teachers will be notified by the guidance counselors
Right,
if
and they have to sign up
completed
for
that.
those AP classes very early.
The exams they have to sign for.
Yes, yep.
Yeah. I think it just makes sense, and I appreciate all the discussions around this.
So we had a long discussion.
We did.
didn't
Yes, we did.
It was a good hour and 45 minutes over pros and cons and weighing it, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate all your thoughts and efforts.
Yes.
Mr. Riley, this is in the policy, not the regs. So
Correct.
it requires school board approval, which
It
is
would-
at the next meeting.
Right, what we'll do, if the board's all right with this, we've got a large batch of policies that went through at the last school board meeting that will be on the consent agenda. We would just add this to that list of policies that are coming through.
I'm done.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe the quickest work session we've ever had. Yeah.